I think we're going to go ahead and try to get started. Just a little bit of housekeeping in the beginning. We do have a couple more sessions with the Tuesday gardening series next week, as if enough wasn't going on that week. Michelle actually is going to do a container workshop, and we still have spaces available for it. We just got a shipment of plants in specifically for that workshop. This is a container workshop where you can bring a container. Obviously, don't bring a massive, container. Bring something reasonably sized. But we'll have soil, we'll have plants, and you'll get to work with Michelle on kind of creating some different great combinations. I mean, for $50 or $40, if you're a friend of the gardens, and you're getting plants too, it's a deal. But that's like I said, we do have spaces available for that still, but they will be going quickly. And then on April 25th, we'll have an introduction to worm farming. Yes.
And he is also a children's book author who wrote a book about worms for kids to not be scared or disgusted about worms. So that's also a big part of his.
Yeah. So for those of you who are online, since Joey wasn't mic'd up, the presenter also did a book about for kids about worm farming and worms, so that kids don't freak out. I remember having an intern when I was at High Point, and this blood-curdling scream came, and I'm like, thinking at least a snake. No, it was an earthworm. And I was like, yeah, you need to rethink this gardening thing if this is going to bother you. But again, just go to reynolda.org, visit calendar. That'll get you to all the links if you want to register for the class. But this, of course, is always the exciting time of year. My wife over at Senior, they had their plant sale. I think that she had one of the best plant sales they've had. So it's kind of like, yay, this whole interest in gardening is sustaining, which we're excited about. And I think people are probably have a few holes in their gardens after 5 degrees this winter, which was, not a fun thing for us to enjoy. I'm not move forwarding. This is why Joey's here. I'd be helpless without Joey. I'd just stand here and scream. But this is always, not only it's a big fundraiser for the gardens. This is one of our big, pieces of our earned revenue to make the gardens continue to improve. A couple things to run through just at the beginning, and I'll rehash this at the end. Obviously, one of the benefits of being a friend of Reynolda Gardens is you can pre-order. So if you see things that get you really excited and you're like, I can't miss out on this way you can go ahead and book those early, because some things will go quickly. We do ask that the pre-orders you pay ahead of pickup. It just makes the process smoother for us. What we'll do is basically, around 2 o'clock, an email is going to go out. Sarah just updated the friends list emails this morning. So if you're a current as of this morning, you're on that list. It'll go out at 2 p.m. When you send your order in, we'll tally it up. We'll check it against inventory. We're constantly checking inventory, trying to make sure that we don't sell out of things and disappoint anyone. But we'll send your total with a payment link. You just pay online. It's really simple. And then you can pick up your order on April 21st from 10 to 5, or come the day of the plant sale. 2 things that we've changed. We started this last fall, was when you pick up on Friday, you can still shop more. We encourage you to shop more. We can always fit more plants in your cars. One thing we are changing, historically, we've always eaten the taxes on this. And I'm, in kind of the eye of keeping the garden sustainable, we'll actually be adding taxes on there now. Because before, basically whatever our total was, we had to take 7% out. Well, as much as I want to help everyone out, we're going to have to start adding the taxes on there. But If you aren't a friend, for those of you in the audience that aren't friends, or if anyone online, or when we post this link later, you can still register to become a friend. We've got to cut off on Sunday because we can't process things quick enough. Believe me, I'll be processing Excel sheets from here to eternity for the next week and a half. Remind everyone the plant sale will be on the front lawn of Reynolda House. So when you come here to pick up or you come here to shop, come in the front gate of Reynolda House. Do not come in through the village. It's a one-way road, which, you know, we always scowl at people going the wrong way, but that'll make it easier and we'll have everything set up. Again, we'll run through this again at the end. The email, it should come from Reynolda Gardens as the sender with a subject line, something like pre-order your favorites. You know, just if you don't see it immediately, check your spam folder. If you still haven't gotten something by 3 o'clock, start emailing us and we'll quickly check into things. So let's get started with some plants. This was at a friend's nursery out in Oregon. So honestly, this plant sale, kudos to Hayden for all the growing, kudos to Michelle and Joey for all the veggies they've grown. We've got over 200 types of plants. I'm not covering them all in this talk. I don't have the stamina for that right now, but I'm trying to hit on some of the really cool ones that we've got on the list, and ones that I think, you know, I would take advantage of and I probably will be taking advantage of. The first one is this acanthus, which is bear's breeches. There is one that, you know, just a plain green one called Summer Beauty. A variegated one had come out before this that, quite honestly, in the heat of the Southeast, it just melted. Well, they crossed that variegated one with Summer Beauty, which always had good heat tolerance. And so they've gotten a nice variegated one with good heat tolerance. And these things, you know, even if they didn't bloom, this tropical, like big bushy foliage, they're gorgeous. But this one, as you can see, will get these pink and white spikes of flowers on it. They're just absolutely gorgeous plants. And they're pretty tough as nails. I mean, you know, obviously get them settled in, but once they get established, if you end up digging it, they usually propagate this by root cuttings. So if you dig up your original plant, you might have more babies left behind you. But we've got this in the sale. This is something that years ago when I worked for Tony Avent, he had an agapanthus trial plot. He kept buying in all these different agapanthus, and it's very interesting seeing which ones did well. Some did well there, some didn't. Well, these actually were bred up in Michigan. So they're zone 6 hardy, no problem with hardiness. So basically, you know, this is a plant that you think of going down to like Charleston or out in California. Well, we can have it here. And we've actually, one of the main reasons we got these is when we renovated the pink and white and the blue and yellow, we've put that in both gardens. But basically an agapanthus that'll do well in our area. And you'll notice a theme when we renovated these gardens. So a lot of these plants are things that we chose that, you know, met the standard for when we renovated the garden. So, you know, if you've grown yarrow, I think a lot of us are used to typical yarrows. One of the nice things is, and this is why, you know, we're constantly looking for new plants, is they went and recollected new germplasm. So basically new plants out of Japan that had new genetics. And when they used that into the breeding, suddenly we got better yarrows. It's kind of like you get into a genetic, you know, like bottleneck that, you know, the plants are just tired and you need, you know, it's kind of like why the royalty would die out or you get the blue bloods. You just keep using the same thing over and over. It doesn't, you know, your vigor starts going. So they brought in new breeding. These apparently, you know, Tony Avent's been trialing these, and these are just much better yarrows. So we've got Sweet Summer Taffy, which is this pink, and then, Sassy Summer Taffy and Sassy Summer Lemon. Both of these, you know, will give us flowering all throughout the summer, really good foliage, good upright habit. They don't flop. If those two colors don't work for you, this is another one that was out there called Terracotta, which kind of has a peach to orange to red. It kind of fades into different colors. But they're yarrows. They're long-lived. You can use them as dried flowers as well. The pollinators will go nuts over them. This is one that I kept trying, I don't know how many times Hayden would order these and our orders would get canceled because there was a crop failure. But if you've grown Japanese anemone, one of the bad things about Japanese anemone is some of them are like lava. They just will take over an area. Well, what happened was in England, they somehow a clumping form of anemone crossed with the Japanese anemone, and suddenly we had a clumping form of Japanese anemone. So this is not going to start taking over your garden. And I've been trying to get this for years. We finally got enough, and I think Hayden was like, "Why are you ordering 100 of these?" I was like, "I want to make sure we get it this time." But this one, Tony Avon has touted this as one of the best ones out there in terms of clumping. It's got kind of a purplish blue bract to it, and it will start flowering in June and pretty much continue up to frost. Always like flowers that can go that long. So there's a whole swan series. There's elfin swan, dreaming swan, wild swan, but this is apparently the best out of the entire series. If you're looking for a nice evergreen ground cover for shade, some of the Chinese gingers are amazing, and this one is probably one of the easiest ones to grow. Asarum splendens. I've seen this used so effectively with like dwarf mondo grass where you get that texture difference. But aside from when we go into single digits, it's going to stay evergreen. It can be a little bit vigorous, so it's a ground cover. You don't want to, if you're going for a ground cover effect, you don't want something that sits there and just barely creeps. So this will fill a nice area in your shade. And basically, if you've got deer generally do not touch acerums. But it's absolutely great ground cover. They're stunning. I've seen them in beautiful gardens where it covers a whole area. Astilbes. Back when I started in horticulture, I remember there was Rhineland and Deutschland, and there were all these old Astilbes that absolutely stunk in the South. They did not have heat tolerance. And then all of a sudden we started getting Astilbe chinensis, which had heat tolerance. And there was one that came out years ago called Visions, and they've been using that line in the breeding. So now there's, we've got Vision in white, there's Vision in pink, Vision in white. They've used that with other breeding. So there's this wonderful one called Delft Lace that has almost, much more dissected foliage, kind of reddish stems with these pink blooms. And these you can push them out into more sun, just make sure they've got moisture. But these are basically Astilbe that are going to do well for us. And they're absolutely stunning when they come into flower. Now, leave it up to, we've got a good friend, Hans Hansen. He works for Walters Gardens up in Michigan, and he's an amazing plant breeder. He does, plant exploring, bringing new genetics in. But what he can do with a group of plants is simply amazing. There have been some Astilbe that have been coming out with this dark foliage, but this one is just absolutely stunning. We were actually with him at the Perennial Plant Association last year, and we saw this in the garden center, and we were taking Hans's photo with it, and he goes, "Oh, I'm way past that one by now." But this is the first real amazing one that's come out with this dark foliage, which even if it didn't bloom, I'd grow it for that color foliage in the garden. So this is Dark Side of the Moon. It does have that chinensis background to it, so it can tolerate our heat and humidity. And we'll just keep an eye out as some of his new breeding comes out. If he's moved past this, it's going to be even more exciting what comes down the pipeline. But again, these will start flowering kind of late spring into early summer. Baptisias, Hans and Tony Avon have both been doing a lot of breeding with Baptisias and introducing all these new color forms. This one, Honey Roasted, kind of has that caramel and yellow flower. Plum Rosy is unique, and it's almost a bicolor. It starts out more that lavendery pink, and then as it fades going almost towards a white, and you actually get that bicolor effect. And if you've grown Baptisias, make sure when you go to plant it, that's where you want to keep it. Because if you've ever tried to move a mature Baptisia, it will surprise you at how the roots almost get woody. We had to thin out the Baptisia collection at the Ralston, and I was getting my rear end kicked by perennials. I thought I was hitting tree roots. I was hitting Baptisia roots. And that's one reason why they are so durable. Once they're established, you're not going to kill them. There is a little caterpillar that can hit them at some times and kind of start making them look a little raggedy. Just cut them off at the ground, they'll reflush. They won't reflower, but at least the foliage will look good again. So these are two of the newer introductions of Baptisias. Good old bleeding heart. I mean, my wife, she said one of her fondest, early memories of gardening was bleeding hearts in her grandmother's garden. They have bred new ones. So now there's this one called Valentine, which instead of being pink, it's that nice ruby red for the flowers. Then we've got Gold Heart, which has golden foliage. And then those, traditional bleeding heart flowers. Now, typically bleeding hearts about midsummer will start looking raggedy, and they're smart. They're like, I've had enough of summer. I'm going to sleep for a while. So they don't be surprised if they kind of go dormant midsummer. And these, we're going to have to try them in uncovered cold frames because they always start blooming a couple weeks ago in the cold frame. So sometimes, it's one of those things of, you got to take our word for it that they're good because they may have already finished flowering by the time of plant sale. Yes. No, the one on the right hand of the photo is Gold Heart. So golden foliage, pink blooms, and then Valentine is that red, ruby red flower. This is one, if you've ever grown, now it's in the same family, it's related to ivy, but you will never, ever have to worry about Fatsia being an invasive plant. It's it's a shrub. So they call it Japanese Aurelia. And, the traditional green one's nice just for a tropical effect. This is from a seed strain in Japan called Sumugi Shibori, which some people love it, some people hate it. Some people look at it thinking, oh my God, it's got spider mite, like on steroids. But it's got this speckled white variegation that it's almost netted across it. You can put this in a dark area in the garden and it'll just lighten it up. And what's great is as you go into fall, when it comes into flower, all the little wasps and all those little flying insects just go crazy over it in terms of pollinators. So, I mean, it's a fantastic evergreen tropical shrub almost for your garden. This one, I don't know how we didn't sell out of this last year, but we've got some more. This is Hibiscus Summer Carnival. The first time I saw this, there have been some variegated, hardy hibiscus out there, but the foliage on this is just fantastic. And then you throw these dinner plate size red flowers on it. So, you get an extended season out of this. It's a hardy hibiscus, hardy up in Michigan. They grow them in the fields first to get them bulked up for size. So you don't have to worry about hardiness with this. You get extra seasons. And as it cools down, those white edges will go pink. So it'll kind of throw on one last hurrah throughout the fall. It's perennial. Yeah. Rock hardy. So Summer Carnival hibiscus. Now it takes a lot for me to get excited about hostas. I'll be quite honest. I've got both the green one and the variegated one is what Tony used to say. Being friends with Hans is doing, Hans is breeding just about everything out there. He had posted these two hostas that he'd bred. This one, just for the sheer flower power on it, I mean, it's absolutely loaded with flowers. It's got this really nice, narrow, almost blue foliage with that wavy edge. It's a smaller hosta. It's not one of the big ones. But I went, the minute I saw these two, this one and the next hosta on his Facebook feed, I turned to Hayden. I'm like, order them now. So I really like this one just for the flower power on this one. And then this one came out and I about flipped because there is a hosta called Hosta clausa. It's a species that instead of clumping, it actually runs. So almost a ground cover hosta. And the reason it's called Hosta clausa is the flower buds never open. They stay tight. And so one of the things with it staying closed, it doesn't get pollinated. So it doesn't, get that biological signal, say, okay, this part's done. Let's drop the petals and work on the other part. Well, I got excited because I thought Hans had finally bred with that one. He said, no, it's just a weird fluke. This one, the flower buds don't open. So you get this almost, saturated purple flowers that don't open, so they last longer on top of this yellow to, it'll fade as summer heat kicks into more of a chartreuse. but it's a smaller hosta too, but just fantastic, staying power in terms of flowers. But I got excited, like I said, it takes a lot for me to get excited about a hosta, especially with the number of deer we have in our yard. This is kind of goes along with my mission of, trying to expose everyone to how much more there is out there. I think everyone, when you mention Siberian iris, everyone thinks about Caesar's brother, which is the purple, that's just everywhere. There are hundreds of selections of Siberian iris, and I've always liked Siberian iris better than the German bearded because the foliage looks good throughout the season. Sometimes you can get almost fall color with the foliage. But these are two ones that we've, obviously for, obvious reasons, we've included these into the renovations, into the pink and white and blue and yellow. But we've got Sunfisher and Swans in Flight. And Siberian irises are tough. They're tough as nails. So, this is something, get it going, and you're not going to really have to do much more about it. Now, if you like iris, and if you like big iris, this is the one that they were doing exploring in China. And one of the things they've been looking for is this hybrid. I can't remember the parents on it, but I've seen it in flower, and the flowers are almost 5 feet high. Hans is not a short guy. He's at least a head above me. And that's Hans in the photo. So this thing is a beast. And what's nice is, for every plant that gets sold, they're actually taking a portion of the sales and sending it back to the researcher in China that found this. And Tony had a neat little tidbit that the first plant that was sold back in 2021, the first plant, which was small, $575. Ours are a little cheaper. But I mean, this thing, like I said, it's a beast. So if you're looking for a big, bold iris for your garden, you're not gonna, and we only have, I think, less than 20 of these. So I would snatch this one up if I were you. Nephofia, or red hot poker. I'll say, when I started years ago, I hated, red hot poker was this raggedy looking thing that was out there. I did not like it. Again, Tony was always good about trying all the different cultivars, all the different species. And you started to see, wow, there's a little more out there than we thought. And then they started breeding. And so they've got all these new Nephofias. It's kind of hard. I don't know what to give this as a common name because it's not really a red hot poker, yellow hot poker. But this is one that, will hit about 4 to 4.5 feet tall. Really, long summer bloom. But this one probably there's a species, Nephofia caulescens, that almost has bluish foliage to it. So it's got to have some of that in the parentage. So this has a bit of bluish green foliage. So a nice tall red hot poker. And then they came out, this is the Pyromania series that Walters does. And these are much shorter. You're only talking about 2.5 to 3.5 feet tall. Really nice upright habit instead of this sprawling kind of messy look. Almost grass-like foliage, but this will rebloom through the summer. So, we've got solar flare and orange blaze. So, again, with red hot pokers, the old ones, they never appealed to me. And I always talk bad about Nephofia. And then it's like, oh, wait, there's more out there than I know about. So we've actually included solar flare, which is the yellow one. That's going to be in the blue and yellow as well. In terms of architecture, there's not much like it in terms of for perennials. Here's another plant that, when I say, oh, I've got a really cool monkey grass, people might think John is finally slipping. But this is one that came out years ago. There's Lady Ursula Hertz down in South Carolina, found this yellow foliage form of Liriope muscari, which it's a clumping monkey grass. It's not that nightmare that just runs for forever and then it takes you 8 years to kill it. This is the clumping monkey grass, but it's got bright yellow foliage. If you've got it in shade, as summer goes on, it'll fade to more of a chartreuse. But if you keep it out in more sun, it'll stay bright yellow, bright gold. And then you get the traditional flowers, that kind of lavendery purple. Just a fantastic plant. I mean, I don't know why we don't use this one. And we have another one. I'd love to be able to offer it. If you go out into the East Cherry Alley, it's emerging right now. one called Okina that actually, when it leaves out, it's leafing out pure white, and then it'll fade to green. Maybe we can try to get some for next year's plant sale, but it's Liriope. You can't kill it. And this one at least is well behaved, but I think this is a fantastic plant. We've got a couple different phlox. I mean, phlox are just mainstays of a perennial garden. There was one out there years ago called Mini Pearl. It was a white one, really clean foliage. It does gradually increase. You cut it back, it'll reflower. Well, it threw a mutation, and out of that came amethyst pearl. So this is kind of a lavendery purple form of Mini Pearl. Again, anyone who introduces a phlox right now, if they have not tested it for powdery mildew resistance, they're out of their minds. So almost all these new ones have been checked for that powdery mildew, which is just a pestilence on phlox. So really good clean foliage, nice habit, but almost this lavendery, it's maybe lavendery pink. I'm really bad with colors. These are two that we added into the pink and white. It's the baby doll series. It's really short, not tall garden phlox, so short garden phlox. But basically it's think about your traditional phlox. Instead of towering 3 to 4 feet tall, this one tops out at almost just about a foot. Again, good mildew resistance, and a good thing with phlox is you can cut them back after they're done flowering and they'll reflush, and you can get a second flush of flowers out of them. Then we do have some taller ones. I think the top one is backlit or backlight, which is I think 2.5 feet tall, and then Uptown Girl is 3 feet tall. We've got both of these that we've used in the gardens. Again, good mildew resistance and good rebloom. I mean, there are certain things that once they cross a barrier in terms of breeding, if you don't do that, there's no point. This is a group of plants, really want to start offering more, but this is rain lily, Zephyranthes. We do have a native Zephyranthes, Adamasco lily, but this is one, I think more heading down towards Mexico. But what's great about these bulbs, they're tough as nails. Zephyranthes Canada actually semi-evergreen. Obviously, when we hit 5 degrees, it just shuts everything down. But a mild winter, the foliage will stay up throughout the winter. But whenever we get a rain, they're adapted to environments that are dry, that they know this trigger of, hey, we just got rain. It's probably conducive to actually flowering and setting seed. 3 days after it rains, they'll come into flower. We've got a good friend, Jenks Farmer down in South Carolina, that when he designs gardens for people, one of them, whenever she would have a party, he'd go out into the garden, run the irrigation a couple days before the party, just soak the daylights out of the garden so all the rain lilies come up and flower right at the garden. But these actually, they can grow in standing water. So average garden soil is fine, going to almost saturated soils. It's just a great, easy plant to have. So that's just some highlights of the perennials. Like I said, we have over 200 plants in this plant sale, 200 different types of plants. So in terms of annuals or tender perennials, Joseph's coat, Alteranthera, coat of many colors. Well, we had to have a couple of different ones. This one on the left, Party Time, that'll do great in shade. It's this pink and green kind of scattered all over the place. That came out, in maybe the late 90s. Then Snow Queen is this little mounding white and green one. Red threads we've offered, for many years, but it's just really good for color in the summer garden. True Yellow. So a couple different versions of Joseph's coat. We've got a couple different types of Brugmansias or Angel's Trumpet. I already looked out here. A couple of them are already starting to come back. I didn't check this one. This is Angel's Flight Variegated. It's very subtle variegation. It doesn't scream at you, but that one came back last year. I haven't looked to see if it's coming back yet this year. Definitely when you have 5 degrees, it tests everything. So sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, but get these wonderful double, almost hose and hose orange flowers. And if you've grown Angel's Trumpets, oftentimes they have a nice heady fragrance in the late evening. So we've got two other ones. We've got Georgia Peach, which almost has this almost yellow midrib with that peachy pink in between the midribs on the flowers, and then Cherub, which Tony Avon still rates as one of the best Angel's trumpets for us to grow in our area. And the trick is with these, get them, maybe if you buy them this year, keep them in a pot this year, let them get some size, and then replant them. When you plant them out next year, if you mulch them a little bit heavier, they'll pretty much come through the winter. So a lot, I want to start trying more and more Brugmansias to sort out the ones that are best for our area for coming back. But this one, Cherub, is just a nice single peach. That Georgia Peach, I love that bicolor. I'm getting ready to go through a Brugmansia phase, so expect more of these to start showing up. Coleus, there are so many ones out there. There's a great nursery, Rosy Dawn Gardens, that they have. I mean, it's all they do is Coleus. I went through there, and there's some old varieties that are still, they're just as good. Some of the new stuff that's coming out. Some of the favorite ones that I've had that we've gotten is fishnet stockings. This one down at the bottom. I love seeing that one paired with something with purple foliage, picking up the color tones there. It's kind of a chartreusey green. Yellow dragon, I love the foliage texture on this one, that scalloped edge, and it's got this thin purple line along the edge. Shiny Shoes actually was a seedling that showed up underneath the benches up at Biltmore. So they had in their nursery, they kind of looked below the benches and saw something that caught their eye. It's this almost looks like it's been lacquered, but it's a dark purple, almost going towards black. And then Morning After is just another, really nice. I love this, the scalloped foliage on that one. But we've got a number of different Coleus. It's always interesting to see which one is the one, everyone takes a fancy to that year. And then, of course, it's the one that we didn't grow the most of. These two, Trailing Salamander and Trailing Red. These are great to put in a container because they don't go up, they cascade down. So it's great to put if you've got something on a wall or you've got something for it to cascade over. These two are really good for that. Galphimia, I finally found a better common name for this, Spray of Gold. We've grown this out in the welcome bed in the parking lot. We've grown it, for a couple years up on the main walk. But it's a tropical shrub. But for us, once the heat gets going, it starts flowering and doesn't stop until fall, or pretty much till frost. And we'll dig them up, throw them in a pot, and I've slammed these down in our basement. And I think I've watered them 4 times this winter. But just constantly flowering. I love the contrast where the stems are red. You've got really shiny green foliage, and then those flowers are just, it's in the same family as crepe myrtles. But it's just a really great summer annual. Not hardy in our area. This is another one that, we've got a handful, just if someone wants to try this out. These are bush morning glories. So they are shrubs. And they'll perform just like a morning glory, where each bloom only lasts for a day. There's a pink one, which is kind of a lavendery pink, and then a white one. These things will easily get to 5 feet in a year, but they'll continually flower and keep throwing out more and more flowers during the season. It's great. It'll get pollinated by like the hummingbird moths at night, but just something a little different. These, I'm actually glad we actually have some of these this year. People have always remarked, since I've been here, I've had these growing and people are trying to figure out what they are. They're native to Africa and tropical Asia, but it's not the flowers that are that showy, it's these bracts. So sometimes it's called tropical dogwood. We've got Donna Evangelina and the Musianda erythrophylla. They're very similar. One's a little redder than the other, but the flowers are just insane looking, almost velvety. The only trick with these is once our temperatures start going below 50, they do not like it, and they will start dropping every leaf. So we've got to remember to get them out of the garden quickly to carry them over for the next season. But we actually, we've got a handful of these that we will have to offer for the plant sale. This is another species. This was up at the Smithsonian. They had them in huge containers. This is Musianda frondosa. Again, these bright white, I mean, it's a brilliant white bract on these, and they'll continue to flower all throughout the summer. This one gets a little bit bigger. Then there's a closely related one called Pseudomucianda. This one has smaller flowers. It's a bit smaller statured, but I loved it. This one year I had this kind of creamsicle theme going on with the orange tithonia. But they will flower the whole summer long. Just something really different from, the way I've gotten them is shipped from Hawaii or shipped from down in Florida. Yes. I don't think we have enough propagated. Maybe next year we'll have the pink one. Because we do have we have actually 3 other ones. There's one that's kind of a salmony orange. There's a pink one and a pink and white one. We're going to try to propagate those for next year. This is what we got this year. Then in terms of ornamental grasses, if you've ever grown like the purple fountain grass, that's pretty common. This is a Pennisetum burgundy giant, and it'll get up to 6 feet tall. It'll have those Pennisetum like flowers. I always thought it kind of looked like corn, the way the stature is on it, but fantastic, really dark foliage, just a great vertical element in the garden. Pentas, or I think Egyptian star flower is a common name for this, but this was a great one that came out of Texas. Greg Grant found, called Stars and Stripes, where even if it didn't flower, it would look good. But then you get these red flowers, and the hummingbirds just absolutely love pentas. But that's a great summer annual. This is one that I saw. There's a nursery in Hawaii that I constantly check his website because he always has some really different stuff. Pseudoranthemums. We've grown the really dark burgundy leaf one. There's a couple other ones. There's a bright yellow one I'm trying to get. But this one, it's got the new growth is this kind of, I don't know how you would describe those first few leaves of, it's almost a red, coppery red, and then it'll fade to this kind of copper color. Just really unique. And pseudoranthemums, you don't grow them for their flowers. It's the foliage the whole summer through. And they love the heat. Obviously full sun for those. Here's another one. This is, it's sugarcane. But this is a purple leaf form of sugarcane, and it's a kind of a smoky purple. You can actually, I was reading some of it online, that you could actually, take a cane and cut it and chew it. Like I keep wanting to ask my my mentor who grew up in Louisiana exactly how to do it. He wanted this because he remembered it from his childhood, so I sent him some plants down. But just a great vertical element in the garden. Love the smoky purple. It's very different from the other, that Pennisetum, but again, it will get tall, at least 6 feet in the garden. Salvia dancing flames. Again, this is one that if it didn't flower, I'd still grow it. It's got that wonderful yellow and green, doesn't burn in the sun, loves the sun. And then you'll get these scarlet, your traditional Salvia splendens that, we've all grown for years. But that contrast is always, it's really hot in the garden. We've got, I think, just 2 different Salvia leucanthas, or no, we've got 3. We've got white mischief, which this is the Mexican bush sage. These are great late season perennials / some of them will be hardy. You kind of got to site them the right place. But white mischief is solid white. Then you've got midnight or all purple, which is solid purple. The traditional one is that purple and white, where the outer is this fuzzy, almost velvety outside with the white flowers. We also have a variegated one called Delilah that we'll have for sale. But these are great for end of the season is when they really start putting their show on. The porter weeds, right when I got here, I went through my porter weed phase and I was trying to grab a bunch of different ones. These are ones that the butterflies and the hummingbirds just absolutely love. It's closely related to verbena. It's almost like if you took your traditional verbena, grabbed the flower and stretched it out into a spike. It's basically this, that's how I imagine, trying to describe these flowers. And basically the same spike will flower the whole summer. It'll just keep moving its way up. I almost feel like it's shark's teeth where, it flowers one day, then the next set comes in. But we've got lavender, we've got these two different species, nectar wand red, which is a tall red flowered one. We've also got the compact red flowered one. I think we've got 5 or 6 different forms of this. And really, it's almost brings more excitement to the garden because the butterflies and the hummingbirds love it so much. See, we did have a couple shrubs in the list. And honestly, I didn't put everything in. We've got the Mexican mock oranges. Again, these, fragrant, citrus-like fragrance to the flowers. We've got Sundance, which is the one on the left, which has this brilliant yellow foliage. It will fade as the season goes on. Then Aztec Pearl, which has this really cut leaf, nice foliage. Aztec Pearl, when we moved from our old house, the shrub was about 6 feet tall by about 6 feet wide. Again, some of the ones that we planted out this last year, that 5 degrees got pretty beat up. It's worth taking a risk again because they actually, once they get settled, they're fantastic. I'll just run through because, like I said, I can't put everything in the show because we'd be here for hours. We have 2 hardy pomegranates in the list. One is it's a variegated one, brilliant red pomegranate-like flowers. And then we've got Tanyosha, which is kind of a peachy apricot flower. It does make edible pomegranates. And a lot of the pomegranates tend to be hardy for us. We've got 2 up in the vegetable garden. We've got a white flowered one and then traditional one. I definitely want to add a couple more pomegranates every year. No, it's actually a shrub, sorry. And pomegranates will once they get settled in, they're from Afghanistan, kind of that area, really tough areas. So extremely drought tolerant. Excuse me. Like I said, too many plants to talk about. We also have the 2 hardy oleanders that we'll have. There's a pale yellow and then a red one. These were ones that were selected back in the 1980s when we had the freezes that took the crepe myrtles, the camellias, everything to the ground. Tony Avett drove around and, that next summer to see what came back. And that's where we got the hardy oleanders. We also have a couple different deciduous azaleas that we'll have available. We've got a couple trees that we'll have, 2, let's see. We've got a yellow magnolia. We've got our 2 native magnolias. We have, and we'll have the plant list up online shortly. We're working on that. But I didn't want to not mention a couple of those things. Vine-wise, people went kind of gaga over this when we had it on the trellis of the bathroom. This is Rex begonia vine. Extremely fast growing vine for the summer. It's tropical, so you can't leave it outside. But the leaves, they look like Rex begonias. Undersides of the leaves are bright purple. But this is a great thing I've seen, put in containers. I've seen someone actually use it as a ground cover, but a fantastic vine. Of course, you can, it's quick growing. And pretty much as it gets cooler, it's going to start slowing down and shutting down. Sometimes if it gets too cold, it'll just drop all of its leaves, but it actually you could dig this up and put it in a crawl space for the winter and just hack it back. Moonvine, I know a number of people, including my dad, were making sure that we had moonvine. It's like, we've got some dependent people on us here. If we didn't have this, I think we'd have angry people. And moonvines are so great if you've got kids to watch in the evening. The flowers always remind me of soft serve ice cream as they start to come out. And you can actually, if you sit there, you can watch them open. And then the hawk moths, when they come out, they're just absolutely amazing to watch. Yes? Is it farm? No, it's a true annual. And those flowers, the fragrance on them too, they're amazing to have in the garden. The vine with the horrible name, Pseudogynoxus chenopodioides. Yeah, and I'm scared if there's a rule of thumb when the taxonomists ever change a name, they make it harder. God help us if they change this one. But this one, I love. Hayden actually grew this as almost a ground cover one year, and it just filled a huge area, and it just flowered the whole summer long. The old name was Senecio instead of Pseudogynoxus. So you can see as it changes, it gets worse and worse. I'm going to turn it over to Joey because he's responsible for growing all of our vegetables and herbs. And if you look over into the melon house, you can see the tomatoes and everything look fantastic.
They were my babies, and now they're my young adults ready to go off into the world. All right, so this is my second spring plant sale that I'm doing, and this year I had way more of a hand into it. So we've got a bunch of the classics along with a couple of my favorites that I've thrown in. So let's get started with the tomatoes. We've got your standard Cherokee Purple, the Brandywine, German Johnson, the Gold Medal. These are all your classic beefsteak tomatoes, perfect for your sandwiches and your tomato pies. The Amish paste and the San Marzano, they're the heirloom plum, good for doing sauces and canning. And if you want to give me a hard time with the San Marzano not being grown in the right region of Italy and everything, you can. I'll listen to it for a little bit. I'll give you your time. But until we get like a volcano feature here and I can breed my own San Marzano-like tomato. These are all indeterminate, so they will grow for as long as the season will until the frost comes. Depending on where you grow it, how much sun in a container, you can get anywhere between 6 and 12 feet, and they will all need either staking or trellising. So I really like plants, but I love a plant with a good story, and this tomato has a good story to it. This is a beefsteak tomato that was developed in the 1930s by Radiator Charlie. He took all the 4 large fruited tomato varieties and bred the Radiator Charlie tomato. During this time, it was Great Depression, so a large tomato that got 2.5 pounds big. Some say it got up to 4 pounds, but a tomato like that during this time was well desired. In the 1940s, he decided to sell it for $1 tomato, and in today's cost, that's $21. And people all over would come and buy these huge tomatoes. They'd go over the rough terrain. It was well worth it. And after 6 years of selling it, he made enough money to pay off his house mortgage of $6,000, and that's how we got the name Mortgage Lifter from Radiator Charlie tomatoes. Sun Gold, these are very popular in the garden. One of the most popular cherry tomatoes we have in the garden. They're tangy and they're very, very sweet, almost candy-like. And they're great. They yield the fruits early and it bears it through the season. They stay firmer so they don't crack as much. And they're perfect from eating off the vine at your own house. And also, so this year in the garden, just a note about the garden, this year I'm growing a handful of different type of heat tolerant tomatoes that hopefully if they do well, I can bring them in here for next year's plant sale. And one of them is called Jolene, which I hope is which I'm assuming is a reference to our Queen Dolly pardon. I'm excited about that one and it will be in the garden. Peppers. I will. So lunchbox peppers. This is a small, compact pepper plant that's great for containers. It will ripen to this bright orange pepper. It's sweet. You can chop it up, put it in salads. What I like to do is slice it in half, cream cheese, everything seasoning, bagel seasoning or whatever. Oh, so good. Carolina Wonder, that is your classic big sweet bell pepper. It's similar to the California Wonder, but it's bred for this area. So it is highly disease resistant. It's good with keeping nematodes away. And yeah. Let's see. This is our hot pepper. This is our featured hot pepper. And I made sure you get your bang for your buck. It is a Carolina cayenne. Again, it's bred for this area. So it loves the weather. It's disease resistant, with excellent with nematode resistance. 2 to 3 times hotter than a regular cayenne. So a little goes a long way, and it's bigger. Let's see. So again, like most peppers, it ripens from green to red. And even if it's green, you can use it for sauces, and drying, or you can be patient and wait for it to turn red. All right. Okay. This was the most talked about plant in the vegetable garden last year. This is the Bolivian rainbow ornamental pepper. It's small, it's compact, but it's got these beautiful peppers that pop up. They're only about 1 inch big, but they look like Christmas lights. They'll start out as purple, and then they'll turn this pale white, and you'll think, oh no, what did I do wrong? What's going on? But then it will quickly go from yellow, orange to red, and it will look like this right here. And this is an actual picture from the garden. I had last year, I had them planted out sporadically, and they did great. But I had one section that I use as a wall divide with these, and that's this picture, and it's just this wall of these Christmas light type peppers that they just pop. They're ornamental, so you enjoy them for the peppers or the look, but you can also eat them if you want. They're like a sweet pepper, but they've got a medium kick to it. It's about 2 to 3 steps above a jalapeno. Yes, all of these here, I mean, 6 at the very minimum, but that 8-hour range is probably perfect. And the more sun, the brighter the color will get. Excuse me, I need a drink of water. So yeah, this was #1 I talked about it every day, and I love talking about it. So I'm glad to have one of my favorites in here. Now, our herbs, we just have basil this year, and we went all out on the basil with different types and for different uses and everything. The Tuscany, the Genovese, the lemon, those are all your classic Italians. Basils, you can use it in the cooking, pesto. The red Reuben is also kind of in that flavor scent profile, but it's got these dark purple leaves to it. It's a little more pungent than the others. So throw it in a salad or use it as garnish in a cocktail. Then you have the Thai sweet and our columnar form of the Everleaf Thai Tower. Again, a classic Thai flavor scent. It's that deep licorice, spicy flavor profile. Now, if the Bolivian pepper was #1, this is #2, the cardinal basil. It's along the same lines as the Thai in terms of that licorice type scent and flavor, but they grow these huge red bunches of flower heads that pop out of it. You can use them as like a floral arrangement with the leaves. You can cut them off with the flowers. They kind of give off an appearance of a celosia at the beginning. And if they stay in the sun long enough, I've seen some of them turn to a little more of a brighter red color, kind of like a cardinal. Let's see. And again, this has that same profile of a Thai basil. You can use it in curries, Asian food, Thai food, stuff like that. And that's it. If you have any questions about any of the vegetables you want to know about, or have any suggestions of what you want to see next year, I'd be happy to hear them. I'll be out in the garden, or you can email me at joey@reynolda.org.
Thank you, Joey. Two other things that we do have a rosemary, because knowing that we hit 5 degrees, I bet a lot of people lost rosemary. This is a variety that we had out in the garden that went through 5 degrees, no problem. It's called Tuscan Blue. So we do have that one. Again, this is the whole reason why growing lots of different plants is then you figure out what are the winners. You know, I remember sneaking back onto High Point University's campus, and there were a couple rosemaries that always made it through even the bad winters. And we're trying to have those for every year, because I know, unfortunately, the weeping rosemary, not a chance it's hardy here for us. It just always fails. But you know, knowing that we had 5 degrees, I was like, we've got to have rosemary. We also have the lavender phenomenal, which is a lavender that is even growing down in Florida. So it's one of the best lavenders for our region. We just got in today. We've got 7 different types of ferns that we'll have for the plant sale as well. And ferns are generally deer resistant. So, you know, that's, I will never say, you know, that always has a little asterisk. If a deer's, you know, hungry enough, it'll try anything. But it's a huge plant list. We'll have the full plant list up online as well, so you can go back to it. You know, like I said, we've only touched upon just the tip of the iceberg in terms of the plants. And definitely, you know, this is obviously goes to a good cause. So, you know, feeding your habit actually has benefits. Just quick reminders, again, we're going to try to, you can pre-order up until about the Wednesday before the plant sale. That's just, we've got to have enough time to keep processing these and pulling the orders. So cut off at 8 p.m. on Wednesday. The pre-orders, you know, if you can, please pay for the pre-order before you pick up. That just makes things a lot smoother. You know, we typically, every year we've averaged at least 100 pre-orders for the plant sale. So that's a lot of plants that we've got to go through. We will email your total and a link so you can quickly just pay online. It's very simple. You can pick up Friday 10 to 5 or the day of the sale, which is April 22nd, 8 to 2. Again, sorry, but you know, we got to, you know, pay Uncle Sam, so the taxes will be added from now on. But if you come on Friday, you can still continue to shop, and if you see something that, you know, grabs your attention, we're not going to stop you. We're just not that cruel. If you aren't a friend, you can easily go online to reynolda.org/support/membership. You can become a friend very easily. We will, you know, as soon as this is done downloading, we'll get this loaded up on YouTube so you can go back and watch this again, you know, because everyone wants to hear me drone on about plants. But you know, we're really looking forward to this. This is always a big sale for us. And you know, I think people are really excited, especially after this last little hurrah of winter showing up one more time. Fingers crossed that's the last of it. Again, the plant sale will be up on the front lawn of Reynolda House. Come in the front entrance of Reynolda House. There'll be plenty of spots there. If you don't get an email by 3 o'clock, after you have checked your spam folder first, you know, give us a shout and we'll make sure that if you're current, we'll get it. I'll email it again. But keep an eye out, because I think we're ready to rock and roll with this. We're looking forward to getting y'all some great plants. Any questions?
There's one
Yes.
in the chat.
Yes.
Will you be selling any straight natives?
Yeah, I think we've got a handful of natives. I know we've got Clethra, we've got again Carolina Silverbell. There's Kentucky coffee, or not Kentucky coffee tree, American Yellowwood. So we do. There is a handful of natives in there as well. Typically, our fall plant sale is the more the heavy focus on the natives. This is more of like your summer annuals and things like that. But there is a whole mixture of 200 plus plants. You better believe there's some natives in there. So we look forward to seeing y'all out there and seeing the orders come out. It's always interesting to see what is the hot flavor for this year. Hopefully everything. But thank y'all for your attention, and thank y'all for your support of the gardens. It really, you know, the results are evident out there. So for those of y'all in attendance here, go walk the gardens and see all the changes that y'all help make. So thank y'all.
That's great.
No.
Sadly, I live in Puerto Rico and leave on birthdays. So
Oh,
I'm
no.
not able to buy anything.